Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, whatever. It is Saturday, and I'm feeling a little productive today, so let's get to work and do some comics and stuff. Okay, so what I'm going to be working on today, I'm going to be working on the comic book, but I want to show you a few changes that are happening in between what I put originally online versus what I'm putting in the book. So let me just show you actually. Okay, so this is one of the villains from the story, the antagonist of the story. This is Benson number 1. He's one of Bond's henchmen, robots, or whatever you want to call them. I was never really a fan of his shape because I don't know, it just did not seem like it didn't seem very interesting to me on how I designed him. And also, I did not like how I designed his fingers as well. They were very flat, and I know that can work in some instances, but I wasn't really thinking through on how his hand was structured. So I decided to change him up to a little bit more natural with the hands, and then I changed his body to be just a little bit more interesting with the shapes rather than this weird, I don't even know, it's almost like a spinning top. So this is what he looks like now. So he kind of has this barrel on its side at the very top, and then it kind of slims down. It kind of creates this fat T shape. The rest is normal except for his fingers. It's kind of hard to see here, but he has more natural rounded fingers now with knuckles, and that way I don't really have to think that much about the structure of the hand whenever he's changing his fists and his hands into different positions. And honestly, I got this inspiration, or let me just show you actually. I was kind of inspired by the Art of Spyro book, which is an amazing art book. If you're really into character design, creature design, this is definitely something that you should purchase. So for Benson number 1, I was really inspired by Metalhead from the Spyro game because I really like the shape of his body. And then off to the left-hand side, there's different designs that the artist did. You can see different shapes. I think the one that I really, really liked was just letter A, that design right there. I just thought it was really cool. Okay, so the main goal here is to just start cross-hatching. And I remember when I first started cross-hatching, this was years ago, probably over 10 years ago. I remember how confused I was because I was like, do you have to go along the form? Do you have to go against it? I don't understand. And I did not do very well on my very first cross-hatching project. But as I've grown stronger as an artist and become more confident in my skills, even though I do research and I do teach myself pen and ink and all that stuff like that, if I can't figure something out, I try not to dwell on it too much, and then I just cannonball in, which I know for most of you, that's probably not a very good idea. Please do not take this as advice. I am just doing exactly what feels right to me. If I make a mistake, I can always erase it or just press Command Z. That's the great thing about digital art. So as I'm cross-hatching, I'm establishing my light source, which is from the very top of this panel, and then I am just rendering accordingly. So all of the shapes that you see, all the underside of those shapes is going to have that cross-hatching. And honestly, don't worry about the direction of the line. If you are transitioning your light and dark, and if it's smooth and appropriate depending on the edge, I think it will work just fine. And then just jump in. Cross-hatching can be a little bit intimidating, but cannonball in and you'll get better. There's always an ugly stage, always. So I'm still learning. I still have a lot of stuff to figure out. So hope that helps, or hope that's encouraging to you. All right, so I kind of wanted to talk about basically why my webcomic kind of failed. I guess I have 3 main points on why I think that is. I think the first reason why it failed is because while I did have everything planned out, I definitely should have listened to other comic book artists and done a physical version first and then transformed it into a webcomic, not the other way around. The reason why is because with webcomics, it is very important to create a relationship with your audience, but you have to make that relationship with the consistent uploads into Webtoons. And I put an emphasis on consistent because I wasn't consistent at all. I think I would create an episode and then post it that day. And I really did try to get ahead. I tried to shorten the amount of panels I would do per episode. And you can notice that as you follow along, the episodes get shorter and shorter. And I just could not keep up with that every other week schedule that I really wanted to do. And since I couldn't keep up with it, what I found myself doing is actually rushing through each episode. And I know that as comic artists, we have to take shortcuts anywhere possible. So if the quality of the work goes down just a little bit, that's perfectly normal. But it started to go down and down and down and down, and that I just wasn't having fun looking at any of the panels. They just weren't interesting to me. And you can clearly see from the beginning of the first episode to the last episode I post on Webtoons is that the style gets a little bit scratchy, gets a little bit rushed. And while some people may think that's perfectly okay and there's no big issue with it, I have an issue with it. And I couldn't spend as much time as I wanted on each episode. So that being said, I decided to cancel my webcomic so that I can just make a physical book and then convert it into a webcomic like all those people were telling me. I should have listened. I did not. That's my artist ego, and I clearly failed. So that is why my webcomic failed. Now, I'm just saying for you guys, if a webcomic, if that is your thing and you can totally do that, then that's fine. I also think another issue of why it kind of failed is because I'm not really the biggest fan of webcomic formats, and I'm learning that now as I was doing it at the time. I'm not a fan of the vertical scroll. There's something about the panels being next to each other and all of them working together as like a whole cohesive piece of artwork. That's the part that I really enjoy looking at. And it's really hard, first of all. So I'm not saying that like when I do produce this comic book, you're going to see beautiful, never before seen compositions of the panels. I'm still learning, physical comic book creation myself. But that is the thing that I'm most familiar with. Like if you look at my studio, I have 2 shelves full of manga and comic books, just physical comic book media. And I grew up on that stuff. And that's also the reason why I should have made a book first, is because that's the one I'm most familiar with. So I'm not making fun of, vertical scroll. If that's your thing, that's great. Just for me, just drawing it, I just couldn't really get into that kind of format. So this is what's going to happen with Cosmic Casuals. I'm going to create a book first. That's the goal. And then once I produce it and find a printer and produce a bunch of copies, and once people start buying it, then I'm going to turn all of those things, all of the book, into webcomics, into, I don't know how many episodes it's going to be, but I'm going to re-release them as brand new Cosmic Casuals, basically. By that time, I'll have the whole story, the entire story drawn out and completed. I'll be able to turn all of those panels into episodes, and then I'll be able to release them consistently because I can schedule each upload to be every other week or every month or something like that. So those of you who have been following along Cosmic Casuals for free and you can't buy the book, I do not want a price to be a barrier for you. So it will still be released for free online, just like in episode format. It won't be released all at once. So I don't know if I'll be able to ship overseas or anything like that, because I know I do have some people overseas that really want to see Cosmic Casuals as like a book. But if you can't get it for some other reason, it's going to be online. Do not worry. That's kind of the reason why my web comic failed. Here's hoping that the comic book is a little bit better.